Tonight on CFTK-TV News, the Conservatives had to go into damage control over a candidate's comments. A report looks into the entire latter half of the BC election campaign, and we'll hear directly from a teenager about what mental health struggles can look and feel like.
Northwest BC's only television news team. We are CFTK-TV News.
Good evening, I'm Cale Maslin. Here's what's making news in the Northwest and beyond for today. A recent announcement revealed that the Prince Rupert Port Authority has decided who will next get support from them via their Community Investment Fund. The PRPA will spend about $302,500 in order to help the Leicester Centre of Arts upgrade its various parts as a way to enhance the comfort of their audiences. The Prince Rupert Performing Arts Centre Society also partnered with the PRPA on this project to make sure that the city's key landmark for arts and culture is improved as much as possible. As for the upgrades, things such as the stage's floor and lighting, the sound system, and even the building's roof will either be upgraded or replaced. The Kitimat RCMP just released their weekly report about what went on in the municipality between October 3rd and 9th. Of note, there was 2 different impaired driving files within 16 minutes of each other early in the morning of October 3rd. One driver was issued a 3-day immediate roadside suspension, while the second got a 90-day prohibition. Both vehicles were then impounded. Other headlines show another single vehicle collision, mischief to property on a field, a fight resulting in a probation charge, and a driver getting a speeding ticket for driving 95 in a 60 zone. A highly anticipated business forum made its return to the Northwest this past week in order to decipher the regional economy. CFTK's Damian Smith has more.
The Nation to Nation Forum made its return to Terrace for the 8th time in its history with a series of different topics to conquer among the many speakers. Hosted at the Thornhill Community Center, many different businesses gathered in the Northwest to discuss their present and future at this business seminar. There were discussions on reconciliation in action, the future of forestry, energy and mining, along with newer technology in the Northwest. The next Nation to Nation Forum will be in late April for the Women's Gathering, which will be situated in Kitimat. From CFTK, I'm Damian Smith.
The BC Conservatives are in damage control mode as a Surrey candidate is being slammed for his offensive comments that he made about Muslims. He apologized, but it's an embarrassing turn for the Conservatives just before the election. CTV's St. John Alexander discusses this further.
Admitting in his words that his comments were completely unacceptable, Brent Chapman is offering his sincerest apology. Even so, his post about Muslims and Palestinians overshadowed his party's latest campaign stop, with the leader in damage control again.
There's no question that the statement that he made, those comments from 10 years ago, I found offensive, and I know many other people do. People sometimes make mistakes. However, I think what is important is actions.
Responding to a post on Facebook, Chapman referred to Palestinians as inbred, walking, talking, breathing time bombs.
That if you have a candidate who engages in criminal hate speech, that candidate gets fired. You make an example of that candidate.
Kareem Alam has worked on many conservative campaigns and identifies as Muslim.
The fact that the leader of their party is standing behind their candidates and accepting their apologies, it's disgusting. It's disappointing, and this is not the BC that I grew up in and was born in.
Chapman remains the candidate for Surrey South, and then, with just over a week to go, this often nasty campaign got even uglier.
We have seen a premier who has lied almost every single day of this campaign. Matter of fact, I would even call him a pathological liar. You see billboards with lies on it. You see information that's going out to households with lies on it.
John Rustad thinks everybody lies. He thinks climate scientists lie. He thinks Bonnie Henry was lying about vaccines and using them to secretly control the British Columbia population.
Eby eagerly fired back, saying his opponent does not like the very people who ensure BC's success.
These are the people who he thinks are liars. I find myself in great company.
Both leaders are well aware the polls are tight. The war of words in this bitter contest is likely far from over. St. John Alexander, CTV News, Vancouver.
Coming up next, a report looks over some of the key ridings in the upcoming BC election. Welcome back. We're the home stretch of the campaign, and shoring up votes in swing ridings seemed to be the focus for both the NDP and Conservative leaders. David Eby talked healthcare, while John Rustad promised to improve BC ferries. CTV's Rob Buffum has the details.
Support we need for BC ferries.
Backed by a crew of shipbuilders at Seaspan's dockyard in North Vancouver, BC Conservative leader John Rustad pledged to overhaul BC ferries, modernizing its vessels, building new ones on BC soil with federal funding.
The ability to be able to work our economy forward, be able to make sure that we can build the vessels that we'd like to see right here in British Columbia.
Rustad's campaign promises include goals of improving service and fares and a monthly flat fee for regular travelers, all of it undoubtedly aimed at swaying ferry users on Vancouver Island and the Sunshine Coast in potential swing ridings.
Any seats that the Conservatives can flip could well be critical, and clearly they are playing for those up-island votes with a promise of better ferry service.
NDP leader David Eby started his morning with a roundtable breakfast in Coquitlam, site of two key swing ridings held by the NDP, pitching his party's new payment model for doctors that's attracted more than 800 new family physicians to BC.
The pace of connection of people to family doctors is only going to pick up. We're projecting 160,000 more people in the next 6 months will get access to a family doctor through our Health Connect registry.
Eby says his party will also entice doctors here from abroad, including through provisional licenses, but acknowledges lots more are needed. More than 700,000 British Columbians still without their own GP.
I'm not pretending for a second that the problem is solved for you and your family, but what I can tell you is we're making progress.
Rustad continued his day by heading to, you guessed it, Vancouver Island. Eby by casting a ballot in advance voting. One of 6 such days for British Columbians to decide who they want captaining the ship on ferries, healthcare, and everything else. Robert Buff from CTV News, Victoria.
And as you just saw, David Eby cast his own ballot on the first day of advanced voting. Polls show it's a tight race, so every vote will truly count in this election. CTV's Reagan Hasegawa spoke with voters on the issues that matter to them.
Advanced voting stations are now open from 8 a.m. until 8 p.m., and many British Columbians are taking advantage, hoping to skip the lines on Election Day.
I don't want to wait, get it over with, and get on with my day.
There are more than 340 advanced voting places, but not all of them will be open every day for the 2 advanced voting periods, which run from today until October 13th, and then again on the 15th and 16th.
The process was pretty streamlined, a little confusing because every other year they give you a where to vote card or something in the mail to verify. Nothing this year.
Elections BC is aware of the issue, telling CTV News the cards aren't required to vote. And while it says all of them have been mailed, it's working with Canada Post to expedite the process. Voters in the Surrey-Cloverdale riding were drawn to the ballot box over a number of issues.
High taxation and the homeless crisis, stuff like that, and high cost of food.
Affordability, homes. The more that we can help the younger generation, that would be great.
Polls suggest a tight race between the NDP and the Conservatives.
Crime is out of control. It's almost scary to walk on the streets at night.
Dealing with the health issues for older people, it's pretty important to us.
Advanced voting is becoming an increasingly popular option. Elections BC says those ballots accounted for more than 1/3 of the total number cast in the last provincial election. Reagan Hasegawa, CTV News, Langley.
And as we get closer to Election Day, we take a look at some of the key ridings in play on October 19th. One intriguing battleground is Richmond, a city that's seen a bit of a political shift recently. CTV's Kevin Chirac has more.
4 crucial seats up for grabs, and BC Conservatives are pushing to turn Richmond blue, bringing in longtime MLA Teresa Watt for the Richmond-Bridgeport riding. A former BC Liberal, the party that once dominated the city until an NDP orange wave took 3 of 4 seats in 2020. Some voters want to keep it that way.
I'm voting for NDP.
Others want change.
I would not vote NDP.
Michelle Molyneux is the BC Conservative candidate for Richmond-Steveston. It's her first time running as an MLA, campaigning to support small businesses and education, including pushing for more schools and other changes.
We do need to focus on anti-Semitism, we need to talk about racism in the classroom and have to mitigate all of that.
David Eby popped by the riding Wednesday, showing support for NDP MLA incumbent Kelly Green. She says her priorities include healthcare and housing.
Those vacant homes, making sure that they're paying their fair share through their speculation and vacancy tax, as well as having short-term rentals restricted to primary residents.
Green also quick to point out her main opponent lives in Vancouver.
Richmond-Steveston feels very strongly that their representation is better when the person representing them lives here.
Me living in Vancouver should not be the issue. I bring a lot to Richmond-Steveston. I have worked in Richmond for over 8 years.
Molyneux says she also mentors students at a high school in the riding and plans to move if elected. Recent months have seen protests over plans to put an overdose prevention site in the city, which was eventually shelved at the request of the Premier.
We're not going to be having a consumption site in Richmond. We don't see the need. It's been assessed, and that's not something that's going forward, but we are making sure that there are other supports.
The BC Conservatives' plan includes shutting down all overdose consumption sites in the province. In 2020, Richmond-Steveston was decided by around 1,300 votes. In Richmond Centre South, less than 200. So with the election just over a week away, candidates will be going hard after those undecided voters who could very well likely be the difference between winning and losing here and across BC. Kevin Chirac, CTV News, Richmond.
Turning to tonight's weather, the North Coast should be getting a bit cloudy as their low sits at 10 degrees. The Terrace-Kitimat area is likely to be home to cloudy conditions as well, with a low of 6 degrees, and the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District is set to be only partly cloudy as their low drops to -2 degrees. On the North Coast, the next week or so will be nothing but rain and clouds as their high moves between 16 and 9 degrees. In the Terrace-Kitimat area, the week for them will consist of essentially just clouds and rain too, while their high shifts from 12 to 8 degrees. And in the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District, the upcoming week will possibly see a little bit of sun, but deal with rain and clouds outside of that, and a high bouncing between 16 and 8 degrees. Checking out the highways now, there will be a totem pole raising on Highway 16 between Lawn Hill Road and Miller Road in Haidaqua on Saturday, and you can visit Drive BC for the latest and up-to-date conditions, and as always, drive safe out there. On Highway 16, there is bridge maintenance, other maintenance work, utility work, construction work, crack sealing, ditching, a geotechnical investigation, and paving operations. Highway 37 has some bridge maintenance, roadside brushing, and slippery sections. 37A has paving operations, and there is some construction work on the Nisga'a Highway. And this is what the roads were looking like this afternoon around the region from the view of the province's highway cams. Still to come, we have yet another update on Hurricane Milton. Welcome back. Now to more concerns about the lack of help for teens struggling with mental health. A Fraser Valley teenager spoke publicly about the struggles she's had since the age of 12. Making the experience more difficult were the obstacles she faced trying to get better. CTV's Michelle Bernero has a story and a warning. Some may find the content disturbing.
There's laughter again between this mom and her 15-year-old daughter, but not that long ago, Emmy Casper Joe was in a very dark place.
She was also 12. That's when I found her in the bathroom self-harming. My mom walked in on me and she started crying and she was asking me, do you want to die? Why are you doing this to yourself? My initial reaction was gut-wrenching guilt and just a lot of mom shame surrounding, having a kid who's self-harming.
What Emmy's mom didn't initially know is that her daughter had suffered trauma that was compounded when she started getting bullied at her new school.
It started to arise with all these feelings of, oh, maybe I'm not good enough, or these people hate me, maybe I should hate me.
The self-harm escalated and Emmy would repeatedly end up in hospital.
She tried to kill herself, I would say 5 times that I know, and that absolutely needed to be hospitalized over.
The family says that Emmy was released from Chilliwack General here time and again before they felt that she was ready and without proper supports in place.
I was willing to get help, but the system just took so long.
After one particularly serious incident, her mom begged a doctor not to send Emmy home.
I was in a sobbing mess. I knew my kid needed help, and I couldn't get her the help that she needed. And so I told him, I said, if I bring her home, she is going to die.
The doctor sent Emmy to the youth psych ward at Surrey Memorial, but she didn't stay long.
I was so upset that I was telling them exactly what I was wanting to do. When I get home, I want to kill myself. I will do it if you send me home.
And they still sent you
They
home.
still sent me home.
But within 3 weeks of leaving the treatment program, she was back in Chilliwack Hospital. She admits at times she lied her way out of hospital. Emmy says she turned a corner when she scared herself.
I had taken medication, my own medication, to try and overdose, and then I realized I don't want to do this. Oh my gosh, this is scaring me.
Emmy and her mom both feel there needs to be more treatment options for children and teenagers.
Places that there are in general in BC, they have long wait lists. They're 6 months, 9 months for long-term care.
Emmy is sharing her story, hoping it helps other teens. She's turned her life around.
I love school. I'm hanging out with friends and spending a lot of time with my family.
And she looks forward to every day. Michelle Bernoro, CTV News, Chilliwack.
Hurricane Milton tore into Florida's Gulf Coast as the Category 3 storm made landfall near Sarosta. The giant storm has so far killed 12 people, and now officials are focusing on rescuing those in need and assessing the damage. CTV's Joy Malbon reports.
As Hurricane Milton barreled into Florida's Gulf Coast, an outbreak of deadly twisters ripped apart buildings up and down the state.
I've lived here all my life. I've never seen anything like this. Never that many, one after the other. Crazy.
At least 38 tornadoes made this storm even more unpredictable. The damage and loss only now coming into focus.
This is a devastating tornado. It took out that 10,000 square foot red iron building.
Surveying the devastation, Florida's governor confirmed there were fatalities.
So, this is really just, and it's a tragic thing because it's not like, oh, they should have evacuated. What do you do when you have a tornado? You kind of duck and cover, happens so quickly.
The deadly storm surge feared for Tampa didn't happen, but the water and flash flooding came fast, and it was far-reaching, at levels never seen. Trapped by the rising water, Amber Henry was terrified.
Me and my children hopped on the oven, and once we hopped on the oven, I called my mom and told my mom, I think me and my children are about to drown to death.
As rescue crews look for survivors, the hurricane knocked out power to millions and left a trail of destruction. The power of the wind ripped off the roof of the Tampa Bay baseball stadium, where first responders were supposed to be based. For many who stayed behind, it's been a 1-2 punch. Just 2 weeks after Hurricane Helene battered Florida, now this.
I think it's just cumulative, it's just, you start to fall out and you get pretty overwhelmed.
Even as the hurricane moves across Florida, officials warn that conditions are still dangerous. Cleanup could take months or longer. And this hurricane season, it's not over yet. Joy Malbon, CTV News, Washington.
A school in Port Alberta celebrated new beginnings, dropping a colonial warship named for a more inclusive one. CTV's Andy Garland reports on sinking the Alberta Armada.
A storm has hit Port Alberta, and it's here to stay.
A long time coming.
Definitely think there's a time for change.
Alberta District Secondary School have changed their team's name from Armada to Storm, and student athletes here think it's a perfect name to represent them.
Storm comes across very strong and powerful, and I feel like the old name didn't have a ton of connection to the students in the school now.
No one knew what Armada was. I think I just found out it was a boat. so it kind of doesn't define anything.
The school held a pep rally last week to reveal the new name, and it took more than a decade for the name Storm to roll in.
This is our 13th year in the building here, and when we moved here we thought we needed a change for lots of different reasons, but it's taken that long.
A part of that need for change was the name Armada itself, which is a Spanish gunboat that actually once took over an ancient village site here.
Our people were actually forced out by gunboats. Like, we actually had people removed from our village there by gunboats.
It's important to acknowledge that those bad things did happen with colonialism, but it's also not something that we should be supporting.
The Shuswap First Nation was asked to help in the process of coming up with a new name, and the word storm has cultural significance.
We can translate the word storm into our language, which is Wixi, but we also have a lot of cultural teachings and different animals that connect back to storm.
We sit on their traditional territories. It's the Hupacheset and the Shuswap, and it's important for us to have them have a voice with us.
Evidence of the past name will still remain inside, and a logo and font for the new name will hopefully be released before the school's major sporting event, the Totem Basketball Tournament, in the new year. Andy Garland, CTV News, Port Alberni.
And now we turn our attention to the stock markets. The Canadian dollar is down 0.04 of a cent, the price of gold is down $37, oil is down 29 cents, natural gas is down 5 cents, aluminum is up $22, in Toronto the TSX is up 168.91 points, the Venture Index is up 9.62, in New York the Dow Jones is up 409.74, and Nasdaq is up 60.89. Still ahead is a look at a very special day for a batch of rescued seals. Welcome back. It was a special day for 5 rescued harbor seals and the humans who helped prepare them to return home. CTV's Martin McMahon saw the Vancouver Aquarium Marine Mammal Rescue Society set them free.
These guys have got it figured out. This harbor seal is among 5 set to return to the wild after rehab and plenty of TLC from the Vancouver Aquarium Marine Mammal Rescue Society.
They came into our facility in July of this past summer, and they've been with us for the last 3 months, going through the whole rehabilitation process, and today is the big day for them.
I think the best part is getting to help with the rehabilitation process and just seeing them come in, and then getting to see them be released back to their home into the wild is really, really fulfilling, exciting, yeah.
The port also lending a hand, or in this case, a boat.
The Port Authority has a variety of different environmental programs when it comes to reducing and mitigating impacts from commercial shipping on marine mammals and the environment more generally.
This one, named Mykonos after the Greek island, is just a few minutes away from his release, but not without a bit of a tantrum first.
We heard Mykonos screaming there.
Yeah.
What's that about?
Just some vocalization, wondering what's going on. I mean, obviously, you know, they've been with us for 8, 10, 12 weeks. This is a different environment than what they've been in for the last little while, so he's probably anticipating, like, wondering what's going to happen next.
And what's going to happen next, sometimes after a bit of hesitation, is a sweet leap to freedom.
And while we often see these seals playing with each other near the shore, out in the open water, they tend to do their own thing. And these seals are expected to go their separate ways. Martin McMahon, CTV News, Vancouver.
That's our news for now. For CFTK-TV News, I'm Kel Maslin. Thanks for watching.